right. Well, I anticipate we're going to have some folks joining in here as we just opened it up. So let's give some folks a minute or two here, and then we'll just get started.
Yep.
And maybe while we do, I'll just kind of get into the opener. So thanks everybody for joining Walk in the Park. This is our second episode, and we're happy to be doing it again and continuing into the future. Today we're talking with Michael Shapiro here, covering transformation in the solid surface distribution space. Before we get started, want to just share some quick details with everybody that's joining us live. Just note that you're going to be on mute for the duration of the presentation, and you can use the Q&A if you want to engage with us, put any questions in there. We'll make sure we leave time at the end to address any of those. And then the presentation will be recorded, so it'll be available on demand afterwards. A lot of people prefer to listen in that manner. It'll also potentially be on our YouTube channel. You could subscribe, make sure that you follow any future content that we're putting out there. So as we get started, first a little plug for our sponsors at NetSuite. NetSuite is a business application that provides a unified software suite to run your business in the cloud. It has capabilities that range from finance and accounting to CRM, warehousing, manufacturing, and commerce. For more than 20 years, NetSuite's helped organizations get organized, grow, adapt to change, and they have over 31,000 companies or businesses that are leveraging them to run their business in 217 countries across the globe. To learn more about NetSuite, you can visit their website, netsuite.com. You can also get in touch with them or our team here at Bryant Park Consulting. And today we're joined by two consultants for Walk in the Park and two speakers, rather, for Walk in the Park. They have a lot of experience and insight that we're excited for them to share with us. The first person joining is Amirr. Dom is an engagement manager with our NetSuite practice who leads transformations kind of across industries, but with a focus on distribution. Dom also leads our data warehousing and analytics consulting team, brings a wealth of experience in supply chain, process improvement, technical architecture. Dom, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Alec. Excited to be here.
Right on. And our guest today is Mike Shapiro, Chief Technology Officer at US Surfaces. US Surfaces is the third largest solid surface distributor and manufacturer in the US. They do residential and commercial service customers in both of those categories, and they offer a premium quality and cost-effective building materials to the customers, predominantly solid surfaces. We'll learn more about those. They have a few brands, Vadara Quartz Surfaces, Hahn Sinks and Faucets, and LivingStone solid surfaces. As the CTO, Mike's responsible for all things technology, systems, strategy, operations, and that includes applications, integrations, custom development work, as well as infrastructure. What Mike's done, over the years is help support them through substantial growth, and we're excited to learn more and get some insight from you, Mike. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be on.
Right on. So to kind of open the discussion, Mike, it'd be helpful if you could maybe share a little bit about yourself, your background, how you landed at US Surfaces.
Yeah, of course. So I graduated from Michigan State with a computer engineering degree, and then my first job was at Dell, working as an engineer there in the server engineering group, and then worked there for about 6 years. 2006 or so, I switched. Wanted to get into entrepreneurship a little bit. Started working with a buddy of mine in a startup. We're building white label social networks. And so that's where I kind of found the opportunity to start growing an offshore outsourcing team, and really learned the ropes quickly. Obviously, being in a startup, you're wearing all the hats, right? So I was able to grow that team and really started growing customers reasonably quickly for any other startups or any other small to medium-sized businesses that needed help. So yeah, that was kind of my transition into entrepreneurship, running my own consulting company. So that was 2007, and on 2008, I started working with US Surfaces. Came to me as one of my clients. At the time, they were, I'd say, probably a small size company.
Yeah.
And yeah, started working with them from like building a website, helping them here and there with just automating some of the processes. And we've been working together, like I said, since 2008 and 2021. So last summer, there's an inflection point in the business where they really needed to upgrade their infrastructure, right? Specifically going from their outdated software applications that we're utilizing to something more enterprise level like NetSuite. And so that's when I came in as a CTO full-time position.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at. Rest is history.
Well, it's being lived. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that. And that's pretty cool. So it's really quick. What is a white label social media platform? What is that?
Social network. Yeah. So it's just like yeah, it's basically Facebook's, right? But for, you know, whoever wants to create another Facebook. That was back in 2006 when different social networks were popular, and everyone wanted their own social network.
That's cool. So you know, you've kind of crossed the chasm from being a consultant or being, you know, kind of in consulting, running your own consulting firm into industry, and you know, working in-house as a chief technology officer. So going from that external role to internal role. I mean, from your point of view, how's that transition been? You know, and then how do you have to kind of change your mindset, you know, in terms of like, even within the context of US Surfaces, like how did you have to kind of change your mindset, or how did it change, if it did at all, you know, about how you're approaching things and strategy, et cetera?
Yeah, of course. So the transition was actually pretty seamless, just because I've worked with US Surfaces since 2008. So I knew their process. I knew all the people. I knew what they were doing, right? I mean, it really wasn't much of a change for me. If anything, it was actually a significant benefit from life work balance, right? In a startup and your own consultant business, you're wearing all the hats all the time. You're working nonstop. Once you get a family, you gotta focus a little bit more on the life work balance. So this was a good transition for me, and I enjoy it. So I only focus now on technology. There's other people that are responsible for accounting and finances and everything else. So I don't have to worry about that, which is great.
Yeah. So, and then Dom, I know you kind of had an opposite experience. You went from like working in industry to then transitioning into consulting. Any like thoughts? I mean, from your point of view, maybe going from in-house, looking at sort of the business systems and enterprise. You were a NetSuite user, I think, as well, to sort of the outside world. I don't know, maybe thoughts on the different hats that you're wearing or frame of reference you bring to the table.
Yeah, from a career perspective, I mean, it's eye-opening. I cannot underestimate like the experience that comes with being consulting and how fast that experience comes. But now in the position I'm in, being able to come from industry brought also a lot of perspective to empathize that within all the projects we're doing, that there's people, and within that comes change management, adoption, and really understanding firsthand that the ideal and perfect scenario typically isn't the reality. And the importance from now where we sit is to get into the weeds, understand the process, understand why they're doing certain things. So really understanding firsthand experience of, kind of the reality for these end users and customers, and being on NetSuite and what growing into NetSuite looks like, being able to wear that hat from time to time, being on the other side of the equation when dealing on these implementations. So it's unique where it is now, but the benefits being at end user first has really came a long way.
Yeah. Pretty interesting. We see a lot of like movement, back and forth. I think it's always, it seems positive and interesting. I think it makes sense for like personal reasons or, aspirational reasons, et cetera. So cool to see. So Mike, a little bit more into US Surfaces, could you tell us more about the organization, what it does? Where's this growth coming from over the last, time since you've been there?
Yeah, so so the company originally started selling in solid surface materials, right? Which is the countertops, and more to commercial businesses. They got into also, so the great thing about US Surfaces, they're very agile, very small, very lean. ever since I started with them, I mean, there's always just a handful of people that are really running everything, making all the decisions, right? There's very little bureaucracy, which obviously I love coming from the startup, coming in from consultant startup world. So really a couple of years ago, they shifted their focus into selling quartz. They made a very good strategic partnership with one of the manufacturers, kind of timing it very, very well prior to all the fees that are, I guess, they were set on the imports from China. So by creating this strategic partnership, they positioned themselves very well and allowed them to obviously grow very quickly. So at this point, US Surfaces is really trying to follow the 80-20 rules, really need to scrap everything else and focus on what's going to bring in the business, right? And what's going to grow the most. And at this point, that's really quartz. So US Surfaces is going to focus on quartz and solid surface. Everything else we're actually trying to drop at this point.
Right on.
So the growth has been significant, right? I mean, the last 2 years, we've doubled from revenue and not necessarily from people perspective. So it's, I mean, when I started 2008, I mean, I think there was like 4 people in the office, but now there's 16 people.
Yeah, but yeah, revenue is meanwhile gone.
Yep, exactly.
Fortunately, far higher. I mean, yeah, that metric I think is a big one that a lot of our like customers come to us. They're saying, hey, we currently are using systems X, Y, and Z. There's we have certain processes in place. We think we're going to double revenue, but we don't want to double headcount in order to double revenue.
Exactly.
How do we improve our sort of like revenue per head ratio across the firm?
Right.
So
I think one of the, just to add to that point real quickly. So one of the big things that I enjoy working with US Surfaces, they're really open to testing and they're looking to automate processes, right? They're not set in their ways. If there's something better, they're going to jump on it, right?
Yeah.
And test it out, do an MVP model, see if it works. If it doesn't, then you keep moving.
Yeah, which is cool. You don't always see that kind of move fast, break things type mentality in building materials distribution, right? It's not a a high tech organization, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I think that's what really makes your Surfaces stand out. It's just being agile and lean.
Yeah, I don't know, Dom. I don't know if you were going to add anything there. Sorry.
Yeah, that behavior was throughout the implementation. Like there was no reason why, there needed to be a reason why to implement certain things, right? And there was a lot of openness to, okay, can it be improved? Are we doing it the best way? Show us how NetSuite does it the best, and we'll make a business decision. Should we conform to that? Where do we need to change? Which is obviously from our perspective a good approach to have to deal with, the openness to change and improve.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about that. I mean, obviously, when you joined or you started working with them early in 2008, like between then and like where you are today, they started with applications that were not, to your point, they didn't experience the pain early on. So they started with a certain set of tools, accumulated tools. You even built out custom apps and front-end experiences for customer management, fulfillment, and so on and so forth. And then at some point, we kind of reached this crux, right? Where all of a sudden, kind of piecing it all together is challenging. Some of those applications maybe weren't ready for a $100 million plus enterprise. And, there was something that needed to happen. So maybe could you talk to us a little bit about that journey, like high level, kind of when things started to kind of get added from your point of view? And then what was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to say, if there was any that was like, we gotta get something like, in here to replace, back office and inventory and all these other things.
Yeah, of course. So obviously, so the 2 pieces of software that were being utilized is Activate, which is the inventory management system, and QuickBooks Enterprise. And I think that decision was made, over 10 years ago, and they were utilizing it at the time when it made sense, right? I think they, for like a small to medium-sized business, these are reasonable solutions, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And they kept growing with those solutions by building on top custom software, where we came in as a consulting company. We came in and were able to, so they would define a problem, would come in, create a solution, right? Something, it was MVP type of model that we would expand and build on top, right? Kind of creating an abstraction layer that would communicate with Activate and QuickBooks. So some of the pain points that we really started feeling is when we really needed to pull and push data into Activate and QuickBooks. Obviously, both those apps do not allow for, do not have any APIs whatsoever, right? So we really had to jump through some hoops in order to make some of the integration happen. And we were limited. There's certain things that we just could not do, right? Because we had to, I mean, just to give you an example, I mean, to push an order into Activate, we literally had to write a SQL query to do an insert into their database, which was prohibited by Activate, right? Which voided their warranty or support, right? So, but I mean, we had to jump through hoops at the time. But we obviously, about 2 years ago, we reached an inflection point where, you know, Activate, well, it wasn't even Activate, it was more QuickBooks. We really just outgrew QuickBooks from financial perspective and accounting team that just, the file size and hosting of the software, it kept crashing, right? The file size was just getting too large. They're just not designed to maintain all these transactions. And we just weren't getting enough or any help really from their support team. And we couldn't really transition into anything that's seamless from outside of QuickBooks Enterprise. So we really need to make a jump. So the two things, I mean, we didn't want to host it anymore because it's not our software, right? And two, we needed something that will grow with us infinitely, and we needed integration. We needed ability to integrate with it. We needed to be able to seamlessly push and pull just about everything we want, just because we have lots of custom pieces that are sitting on top. Kind of abstracted layers. Just to give an example, like our customer support team basically has a separate portal where they process their orders in it, right? They will have they want to have all their information at their fingertips. Previously with Activate and QuickBooks, they'd have to go in 3 different systems in order to get the data that they wanted, right? So that was, I mean, that really was the inflection point.
Right. And I think you guys were hiring more people too. I mean, like you had a new CFO come into the mix, right, over the, you know, very recently. And obviously with that new, you know, more capital, right? You know, there's more, you know, you start to bring in, you know, new leaders and you know, folks who are going to help take that organization to the next level. And all of a sudden they come in usually from some other environment where they're, you know, maybe more accustomed to say mid-market or enterprise solutions. And they land and they go, oh boy, you know,
yeah, you guys are still using QuickBooks.
Yeah, and that's usually the impetus we see as well. But you know, it's interesting to your point. QuickBooks is a phenomenal solution. Like, don't want to bash it by any means. I mean, I think for small enterprises, it's been the standard. NetSuite's going down market and creating solutions that probably will replace it. But still, I think that the reality is that, you know, there's the narrative which you're experiencing, multiple systems, everybody kind of sort of starting to struggle, new people coming into the mix, and we're demanding more data, you know, the business demanding more complexity with like pumping data in and out of multiple channels and sources, and you're trying to automate your customer experience. So you got to, you know, interact with the operating systems. That's usually big drivers. And people say, wow, how can we kind of start to bring these things together in a single place? Get it into, you know, more enterprise ready application so that, you know, the users can get what they need, IT and you know, technology can get what they need. And we can also get rid of the parts of what we're doing that we don't want to manage anymore, that aren't like a strategic differentiator, like the rack in the, you know, in the server room, et cetera, that we could probably not maintain any longer because that's not our core competency, right?
Exactly. I mean, when you're spending more time trying to maintain and fix issues. Your accounting team is trying to work with QuickBooks, right? Trying to fix issues versus actually doing accounting work. I mean, you really know you
Yeah.
have a problem.
And Dom, you were in the yeah, you did. Yeah, you're right. It's funny actually. There's a statistic out there that data quality issues, of all the data quality problems that exist out there. I know Dom and I did a presentation on this a couple months ago. Finance is the most impacted group of the entire organization because it's sort of like all of the bad data sort of just rolls downhill and they have to produce financials with it, right? And analytics, and they're like, oh boy, we got to. They spend almost 60% of their time actually cleaning the data and getting the data scrubbed and digging into it, and that's a big challenge. You want these people to actually drive value, not just clean up a mess.
Yeah,
But Dom,
yeah.
from your point of view, Dom, you work pretty closely with some of the accounting team members, like Michael's counterparts there. What was there anything specific that you started to see as well as like kind of a problem with QuickBooks? I think like intercompany maybe was one. I know that's still challenging, certain challenging components of y'all's intercompany requirements still. But Dom, I don't know if you have any other big kind of pain points that you saw like the accounting team at US Surfaces was feeling in that.
Yeah.
before-
I mean, to Michael's point, like the business is drastically different, or at least more sophisticated than when they were initially on QuickBooks. And from the business strategy, they had multiple companies, whereas that was not. They had two separate instances of QuickBooks. It was all spreadsheet work, and producing consolidated financials, that's impossible in that type of environment. So that was one, right? It's like we're going under one system.
Mhm.
A lot of change management, a lot of master data management, but that was like benefit one of a lot of things we had to probe on of, well, why do you do it today? Separate systems. All right, let's nix this and let's file under training and adoption and really make sure we get this design throughput established. So that was probably one of the biggest ones, but also just the tools that came with NetSuite to standardize and have one way to do it, right? It's you're probably have 3 different ways to do the same thing, depending on who you ask. Let's lead with this way and let's find a reason why it doesn't work. So being able to establish processes that just simply weren't there, we were all opportunists in that regard to, okay, guys, this is how we're going to do it. And that was a big piece from going through accounting close, and reconciliations, et cetera, really jumped on the opportunity to standardize those.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good opportunity, obviously, when we also, it's not just, solving the technology limitations, but to be able to like reflect upon how we're actually doing business, think about, well, we've hired these people since, but we haven't taken a step back and thought about, well, what is that person doing? And what is this person doing? Where are the handoffs? We've, our accounting department's gone from 2 to 4, but we didn't refresh our process, right? Well, certainly we've, maybe it's happened like kind of organically between the time I hired those people and now, but did we really step back and actually like document it, right? Put a flow diagram and SOPs in place so that if person A or person B, walks out of the organization, we have to pull somebody else in and educate them. Like, is everybody on the same page here? Are really doing things the same way? Because then if it's not that, then you have discrepant data. If you have different processes, and you don't know where to go to get the data, so then the reporting is inherently flawed. It's an interesting dynamic. So Mike, one thing that like you have this puzzle, right? I mean, in a way, it's like, all right, we have all these different pieces here. And I remember working with you in some of these conversations, like, okay, where do we start? Like, what is the first thing that we do here? What is the second thing? So, how did you come to a conclusion as an org, as a team? Like, what is phase one? What's our priority? Why was that the priority? Like, how did you come to that conclusion? Because obviously you guys did not do everything you will do in the first phase of the project. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we knew that this was a huge undertaking, right? There's a lot of data scrubbing need to happen. We really needed to figure out our processes efficient, right? Especially from accounting and financial perspective, right? Do we need to standardize? What do we need to standardize, right? How do we improve this and so on? So our number one goal was for this switch to a new ERP was to minimize risk. That was the biggest goal. We did not want to we did not want this to affect the business. And by minimizing the risk, what I mean is we want everyone to have the same, as much as possible, same processes, right? From the customer service perspective, we don't want our customers to be affected in any way. Accounting team and financial team was in a slightly different boat because they really need to relook at their processes, right? And really needed best in class what's offered out there, right? Really needed to look at that because they were in a way they were kind of a mess. So that was our phase one, really, just to minimize what we change, only utilize the integration points to mimic exactly what we had, right? And clean up the data, import the data, and address all the accounting financial and relook at accounting financial processes and see what's going to work best going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So, how do we, everybody who goes through these things like big nightmares, you hear the stories about, oh, XYZ company, couldn't ship orders for 2 days because XY,
Right.
so on and so forth. So obviously nobody wants to be a part of a project consulting team, anybody internally, where that sort of an outcome happens. But at the end of the day, at some point, you got to stop shipping out of this system and you got to start shipping out of that one. So, you got to make that cut over. I think the phasing is so important. And I like that you're highlighting that's like, we wanted to minimize the impact to the customer, in all regards, but in every way we could. But we wanted to like everything kind of behind the scenes. The customer kind of doesn't see, right? We got to get that in order. And that's what we're going to focus on to start. And it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Right. Just to add to that quickly. So just our advantage, I think, was obviously we had some of the customer facing custom solutions that really abstracted these backend systems, right? That I think that was our advantage, that it did not allow us, that would not have a showstopper in any way, right? For customers to continue placing orders.
Right.
All the pricing, everything was set in outside of these systems.
Right.
So as long as we could continue taking orders, even if we had to, even if the ERP transition was broken, we could still take orders. That was our, that was our main point.
Right. We could take orders, we can collect payment, and we could ship these orders. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
You do those three things, the rest can kind of, we can run around with our hair on fire and stay up at night, but we can't impact. If we impact any of those things, the whole process, the whole system is impacted pretty substantially. So but just for some of the people, like the things that you're building, your custom stuff that you're building on the front end, those are like e-commerce portals, kind of order entry portals for like contractors and stuff like that. What kind of stuff are you talking about?
Yeah. So everything that's customer facing is completely our custom solution, right? And the reason we went custom is because we wanted to test and in an agile manner, really test different things and pivot if we needed, right? We wanted to launch different programs. And so we built this custom solution to really, as 3 different e-commerce stores, right? We had a sales order portal specifically for our customer support people that would take the orders in and really manage everything, transition them to the warehouse. We built over the last 10 years, we built a warehouse portal, right? Where we actually managed all the trucking, everything. I mean, all the logistics. Yeah. So, I mean, in a way I feel like that was our advantage, right? We didn't have to transition all these pieces. If we had to transition all the warehousing, I think that would have been a significantly larger undertaking and a much higher risk. And because we had those systems in place that weren't relying on ERP transition, we didn't have to do that. So it was lowered our risk significantly.
Right. And I think that's, that was definitely a great, I think, strategy to take and allowed for a very expeditious implementation versus re-platforming the entire technology stack. Right. There are some companies will come to and they'll say, you know what, we don't even have, in your industry even, we don't have e-commerce at all today, right? Is a very common reality,
very
right?
Common.
Just getting into it.
Yeah, a lot of companies just take it over the phone, right?
Right. Well, no, take it over the phone, or they, even better, they take it in person, right? Show up and, take an order. I think that's a very common way of doing it. Your company has been super from the very beginning. I mean, I would say, again, you guys are very sort of technology forward in building out and investing in these e-commerce tools. But it's interesting, some of the things that we tend to find is folks they lean more heavily into custom technology, right? The more they are hindered by that underlying technology. So, but it's cool. In terms of like the buy versus build decision, right? Kind of to that point, it's like when it comes to certain things, like how do you look at it? From your point of view, like obviously, if we ask your chief financial officer, they might be more inclined to buy than to build, right? But when you talk to the chief technology officer, it tends to be a little bit more on the other side of the spectrum, right? We feel a little bit more confident in our ability to deliver, good working applications or sustained applications, but maybe there's this interesting balance between different stakeholders at every company. But I'm just curious from your point of view, like, how do you guys look at this buy versus build decision when you look at your roadmap for like the next 5 years, right? What do we put into NetSuite versus build custom, or what do we go and buy something off the shelf versus build custom in general?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, typically the way I look at it is kind of as I would a startup, right? That as a consulting company, you got to define a problem, right? And you have to do the research, see what's out there, and you got to do an MVP. MVP has got to be a low cost solution with something that already exists, so you can try it out, see what it's going to be like, whether it's going to work, or whether it's going to fit your needs or not, right? And you can try multiple iterations. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you fail with one, you try another, so on. It really drives a decision. Is this going to solve? Is there something out there that's going to solve it for us, or do we want to build something ourselves? And in a lot of cases, I mean, 10 years ago when we were doing a warehouse management system, there's really wasn't anything out there that would manage all the trucks the way we wanted to. So we ended up just building it ourselves, right? So we just could not we could not find anything off the shelf without spending millions of dollars, right, into like super expensive systems that they had 90% that we didn't need, right? So that was a decision to go custom. That's typically how we'd like to approach it. I mean, again, keep it lean and always try and don't be afraid to fail.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a nice like kind of angle, I think, for the again, tech forward companies lean into that, fail fast kind of mentality. It's like, how can we take an isolated risk, right? Or pilot maybe a certain customer or a certain segment of our customer base, or a couple of users if it's a new internal capability, right? New planning, new this, new that. On the topic of trucking, it's interesting, so just kind of an aside, it's kind of unique. Why is trucking so weird in your industry compared to others? Like delivering solid surfaces is pretty unique, right?
Yeah, it's just it's managing. So solid surface and quartz, right? You need these specific A-frames or these special frames to actually carry the material, right? If you're utilizing third-party freight, makes it a little bit simpler. But if you're utilizing your own trucking, right, that makes it a little bit more unique, because you have to know where you have to know where the truck is. You've got to keep track of every single material, what the location is, what is the most optimal location for the warehouse manager to be able to manage it, set up those routes, right, initially, and actually like follow through on where the driver is and what they're doing. From every route, from the communication perspective, from the timing perspective, right? I mean, there's very little nuances here that are important, and how the customer perceives it and what they're seeing is that's what matters, right? So that was we just couldn't find a solution that was reasonable enough for what we wanted, and we knew we could build it.
Yeah, it's cool. And I think you're right. Like there are some of these like big ticket transportation platforms, but that they're used by very large organizations. Kind of it's interesting to think as well, like kind of the same narrative about how you started with some of these other tools. It's like, well, we started with custom applications because the business wasn't $100 million business. It didn't make sense.
Right. We were small, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you're talking about
exactly.
2 trucks. We didn't, you're starting out with 2 trucks, so we needed something simple. Obviously it grows with time, but
Yeah,
it was more about, tracking it and the communication, right? And setting the right expectations, creating these proper routes, right? Without spending millions of dollars and investing into some infrastructure that we didn't need at the time. So it
right.
was, in a way, it was an MVP for us, right? It was just something to try out. We tried out a few other solutions at the time that were low cost, and they weren't gonna solve it for us. And for the needs that we wanted, it was simpler for us to build.
Yeah. So I guess kind of reflecting, you kind of shared with us, I think earlier, even without me asking, like kind of what was the reasoning for jumping into the NetSuite project? I guess kind of looking back since your go live, what was your go live date? It was like
February 1?
Yeah, February 1. So yeah. Remember, it's like it's got it stamped on my shoulder over here. But no, it's so yeah, it's been like 6 months or so, right? So a lot of time for sort of the dust to settle. You start to kind of your team to kind of familiarize yourself with the tool very extensively, and also then reflect a little bit. I guess I'm curious, like obviously, we highlighted on some of the challenges, like we've consolidated information, we brought things together. I guess what are some of the other like big wins or big benefits? Any other like benefits and things that your team has kind of been able to improve or benefit from even since the go live date? And then we'll maybe flip around and talk a little bit about some of maybe the challenges that we had during the project and how other people can avoid those in the future. So Mike, I don't know if you want to get us kicked off there. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing I just want to mention that super important for us is because this was such a big undertaking and these ERPs are such a complex system, right? For us, finding the right partner to take us to get us to where we wanted to was, I would say, the most important goal. It wasn't even the software, it wasn't the ERP. It was finding the right partner who's going to do the best, in a way, hand-holding to get us there. So that was the most important thing, and BPC really stepped up. And when you guys first showed up, I mean, to be honest, like NetSuite was, we were looking at NetSuite. It was most likely not. It was going to be the last. It was in the last position at the beginning, right? Absolutely last position with other competitors. But after speaking to you specifically, Alec, right? Because you were on site. I mean, you just blew us away. I mean, we knew. Like I said, I mean, cost was primary factor and having the right partner. And the reason we went with NetSuite is, I would say, more BPC than anything else.
Yeah. What other tools did you guys like kind of look at? I mean, maybe from the point of view of NetSuite, obviously we're awesome. Thank you so much, by the way, Mike. But I didn't ask him to say that. I promise you guys. But I think the thing that I'll say is when it comes to like applications, were there any like standout features, characters? You mentioned integration friendliness was probably big for you.
Yep. So, yeah, absolutely. So we looked at Sage X3 and Microsoft was it Business Central, something like that. Yeah. So they all, from feature perspective, what we needed, right? Again, we just needed inventory management, accounting, finance, kind of modules are what we needed to switch. So all these three, really, they had everything, right? They had all the features that we wanted. So that's why I was saying the ERP itself wasn't as important as the company or the partner that would actually take us there, because we knew this was such a big effort, and jumping into a brand new ERP without the experience of enough experience in that ERP, it would have been a significant undertaking. So I'm just. Yeah, so I'm just so glad that we found a right partner to do it, and we were actually successfully transitioned it in a pretty quick timeline.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, right? So originally when we were talking, your team was really set on getting it done we did. So the fact that you said the go live was February 1, 2022 was not the original target date, right? I think we
Right,
originally
yep.
was it December 1?
So it's
11/1.
January 1, I forget what it was, somewhere around.
Well,
We
yeah,
had
yeah.
an
Well, I
extension
mean,
here. So
yeah, we
so
started out, so
Yeah.
well, we kicked this off with September, early September. We said December 1 was original, but I mean, very quickly knew that wasn't realistic. 2 months was just not realistic to do it. Just especially once we started digging into the data and scrubbing the data, and it just wasn't realistic. So that shifted to January 1, and and that was, I think that was a mistake, obviously, as we looking back now. I mean, scheduling it on the holiday, right? That's just, I don't know. I mean,
it's tough. So we see this a lot. Like everybody, like the accounting organization, obviously, you're not the one closing the books at the end of the year and care so
Right.
much about exactly when that accounting date is, right? But
Right.
obviously, for every CFO and controller, the ideal go live day would be January 1, right? From an
Exactly.
operational standpoint, unless they really want to spend New Year's Eve having a good time, like I do, and hopefully you guys do too. But I think the strategy that we tend to recommend to organizations now at this point, we've kind of learned we've done this a number of times enough we try to steer people toward like either a mid-January go live date, and we backfill details for the first 2 weeks. So you still have that January 1, full 2023, full 2022, whatever calendar year of detail in the new ERP. But we're not telling everybody that they need to give up their New Year's Eve to load data into NetSuite for cutover, right? As an example, because the cutover sequence, it takes like 2 days, 3 days to get all the stuff. You got to kind of plan that process very succinctly, and you definitely don't want to do it on New Year's Eve. Your loved ones will not be big fans of you.
I mean, looking back, I don't know how anyone in the company thought that was that was a good day to pick.
Here's what I liked about you guys, honestly, early on, and we acknowledged, I think, when we were originally engaging, like, you guys are being very, we are pushing hard to try and get, and I think it was because QuickBooks or Activate was falling down and failing, and there was issues that were really painful, and they're like, we need to try and get this done fast. But it's good to see. So what was it that, or what were some of the things that maybe did slow us down, maybe prevented us from going fast? Because from my point of view, for anybody who's listening, right, who's considering a project like this, they're thinking, okay, where are the gotchas? Like, what am I going to run into that's going to slow us down? It's usually high level stuff. I mean, like, there's little features and stuff like that, but that's not really what I think is relevant to everybody. Is more, could people not agree on process, right? Or was it, you mentioned the data? That sounds like that was actually a big problem.
That was the biggest one.
Yeah.
Data scrubbing, and really, data scrubbing and cleaning up all our SKUs, all the all the products, everything. It's just, it was not, I don't know. We were way optimistic that was going to happen. I mean, trying to run the business and trying to scrub the data and redesign what it should look like from the accounting perspective, right? I think that was just way too optimistic. The accounting team thought that they could do it, and obviously, again, as you said, I mean, January 1st for them, starting off a new year in the new system would have been ideal, but looking back, it was just not realistic.
Yeah, but
Michael, I will say,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry for cutting off, Alec. I will say, while data was the culprit, we never lost focus, and definitely testament to you all. You never lost focus on the MVP and what is our success criteria. And it was customer experience with integration. And it was deemed that poor data quality would hinder the success of the integration and the customer experience. So that got prioritized to be, this is go live critical. Because Living Connect and the customer experience was, back to the original, take orders, fulfill orders, invoice, collect cash. So that, that decision was actually pretty clear that, well, until this data quality, it's going to take the time it's going to take until it's done right. It's going to be a sliding scale when we can go live.
Right. So maybe the magic question. I mean, I'll push it first to you, Mike, and then Dom. I want to get your input too. You guys are the ones who are making it happen, right, day in and day out. But what would you do? Like, put yourself back in September, right? Would we have just been more realistic with the original timeline? Is there a way we could have maybe pulled forward some of the data stuff, maybe gotten started on it even before then, or like what practically could, you know, an organization, so somebody's listening to this like, all right, well, what do I do about it, right? What do you think?
Yeah, it's really prepping, understanding where your data is, right? And the amount of work that it's going to take. I mean, the more prep you can do, the more ready you are to import the data into a new ERP, the better you're going to be. And we just weren't ready to import it. I mean, no cleanup was done until we're talking about December. Really, we started cleaning data.
So getting ahead of it a lot sooner. Don, any thoughts from your point of view?
Yeah, especially going from consolidating multiple data sets to the same table in NetSuite, one being a lifeline for an integration, it's a parallel project. It really should start when the project starts, not whenever, you know, in a cascading fashion, whenever it's time. Would have pulled that much forward.
Yeah.
From an integration, the integration was a piece of cake. I mean, you guys provided us everything we needed. I mean, the integration was simple. It's just it was all data scrubbing and importing.
Yeah, we'll give a shout out to Kunal. Well.
Definitely,
he's a champ.
Yeah, definitely, it was a big help for us.
Yeah. So I guess, like, you know, getting to the end of things, and we'll see if there's any Q&A. But is one of our last questions, I guess, is just, you know, you're a chief technology officer, one of the largest solid surface distributors in the US. What are some of the things that you're seeing, like industry trends, maybe new tech, stuff that's exciting you or interesting you, maybe that you guys are sort of planning for your next MVP type of feature set? What kind of stuff is on the horizon?
Yeah, I think the next big thing, I mean, so right now all our items are lot numbered, right? I think we're gonna have to transition to more serialized items. Going towards that approach, I think that's on the horizon for us as far as process change and technology change. The rest is really just execution and, you know, growing the business into different markets. That's because we're really just only in a handful of states in US. The US market for us is, we're not even thinking about going international. I think we probably still have at least 5 years before we even thinking about that. So like I said, so it's going to be serialization, and then just improving that customer experience from a technology perspective.
Yeah. So what are the implications of serialization? Like, I mean, that's pretty big change for you guys, right? Because I mean, that touches like the whole customer experience, like picking, you got to go and choose the specific like unit that was ordered potentially, or you just maybe they just get whichever one came off the line. So a couple things. One, why do you want to move to serialization? Like, why is that interesting or exciting for the company? Like, why is that even an initiative? And then two, like, what are some of the like kind of implications there? I'm just to feed my curiosity.
So it doesn't really affect the customer that much, really. It's really just for us. It's keeping track. It's just a better process keeping track of everything you have, right? And so right now we don't have a clear picture of where what is, right? Every single slab. So we just have lots, right? And we know how many slabs are in the lot. That's all we know, right? But we don't know which one it is, what it looks like, right? Each one individually. So that's the advantage of us. It's just for tracking purposes. It's just a better approach as we grow, as we have more inventory, right?
Got it.
I was going to comment, you're currently using lot, which is more traceable than not, but you want to go another level deep to have and kind of build the process around, and there's benefits to having that rigidness. So, okay, let's enforce the rigidness because we know the benefits, and build a process around it that can support it.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, well, cool. That's awesome. And so, you know, I think we will kind of wrap and turn to some of the Q&A that we're getting. So I guess one of the questions here. So unit of measure, how do you sell a slab? Is that by the size of the slab? Is it by sort of a surface area? Is it each is in a standard unit of measure, sort of standard size? Or because you know, each job, you know, requires different sizes, so on and so forth. So maybe you could speak to that a little bit, like,
Right, yeah, all slabs are the same size, right? There's different thicknesses, but they're all the same size. Right,
okay,
I mean, obviously, we have a, you have a calculator that you can calculate how many slabs you need for a specific job, right? For the surface area that you need. And then you just figure out how many slabs you need, but all slabs, as far as length and width goes, they're all the same size.
standard from the like
Standard,
manufacturer.
exactly, yep,
Yeah.
Yep.
That makes life a little easier. So you're selling them by the each, basically.
exactly, yep.
Yeah, got it. And then is
Yeah.
there, so, it's, you don't really worry too much about, you guys don't do any cutting or processing of, you send it to the contractor and they do everything from there, getting it installed and.
Exactly, yeah. We used to sell half sheets, but it's just, as a distributor, it just doesn't make sense for us to do that anymore. I mean, we do have programs where we'll sell some of the B grade and C grade, but that's nothing to do with the size or with the, it's just a variability of cost and availability, that's all.
Awesome. Okay. Well, yeah, I think that's all the questions that we had here. Really appreciate your time here, Mike, and joining us. It was awesome. Good discussion. I think some good points, hopefully, for everybody who listens in. And Dom, appreciate your input as always. Hope you have a good rest of that on-site go live in South Carolina, sir. And then I'm sure we'll all be in touch here soon. Grab some drinks when we're back together in Austin together.
Sounds good.
All right, y'all. Well, good chatting, and we'll have a good one.
Thanks, guys.
Look forward to it. Bye, y'all.
Have a good one.
Always
Take
good to see you,
care.
Michael.
All right, you too. Bye.